Hey, Caitlin, welcome to the call.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We've got a little bit of time here and we're just getting started. So share with us the wonderfulness of who Caitlin is.
Sure. My name is Caitlin Winkley, and I am a top level international peak performance coach and speaker who specializes in helping driven women get unstuck in order to help them achieve their fullest potential. I help women who want to achieve their goals in a more succinct way and finally get past their mental blocks and open up to their highest potential. I do this by providing a unique combination of spiritual and pragmatic coaching, which helps my clients achieve uncommon results in less time.
That is a very direct, specific calling. And so very driven to help women get unstuck.
Yes.
And so in these situations, what are you kind of finding in yourself that helped draw you into that field? And kind of like what happened, along your journey to kind of direct your life into doing that?
Well, I was a person who was stuck for a long time. Um, I did receive training. About 13 years ago, I attended a 3-year program called the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism.
Hmm.
And there I learned how to work one on one with folks in a coaching healing capacity. And aside from that, I also attended Naropa University, where I received further training in the field of early childhood development and education and psychology. So I would say that is my educational background that qualifies me to do what I do.
Hmm.
But to be honest with you, I think my biggest qualifier is the challenge that I have been able to overcome within myself, which is getting unstuck. And I can share a story with you that was a real pivotal moment in my life that was kind of one of those spiritual awakening type of moments that really shifted the trajectory of my life forever.
Hmm.
And here's what happened. So, back in around 2009, I was working as a nanny for a family. It was a very high powered family in the music industry.
Okay.
Back then, I really lacked confidence. I lacked self esteem. Although I had already completed the training that I told you about, honestly, this was before the word even life coach was popularized. Nobody had even heard of it, including myself. I did it because I was just interested in personal development. I always have been since a teenager, really. So I had that training under my belt, but I wasn't quite applying it. I wasn't quite implementing it. I wasn't quite showing up from that higher level self yet. Yes, I had done some work, but I have more to go. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was working as a nanny for this high-powered family, and because I lacked confidence, seeing the mom and the dad show up in such this boss-like way, honestly was kind of a trigger for me because it showed me the places that I wasn't.
Hmm.
And what started to happen is that I would get paid from them via direct deposit. And I started to notice that my pay would be off. So, for example, I was promised a raise that never got reflected in my pay. I was asked to do extra tasks in exchange for bonuses that didn't get reflected in my pay. And sometimes hours and days were missing from my pay. So, obviously, a person who
No,
had
thank you.
yeah, who had high self-esteem and confidence and would know how to have difficult conversations, of course, would have no problem talking to their employers about this. Like, hey, I don't know if this is an accident, or I don't know if you're forgetting or what's going on here, but I'm noticing my pay is off, right? So that was a higher level skill that at the time I lacked. So what I decided to do was take it into my own hands, and I did something very passive aggressive. So there was a credit card that had my name on it that was linked to the mom's account. And that credit card was really meant to be used for household expenses, groceries, things for the children, etc. But like I said, it had my name on it. So I thought, I'm scared to have this difficult conversation. So I'm going to try to handle this
I
myself.
like where this is going. You
Yeah.
took ownership.
Kind of, yeah, in a around the back door way. So I decided to use the credit card and essentially pay myself. But even though it had my name on it, that was still illegal because it wasn't technically my money. It was linked to the mother's bank account. So basically, they got wind of this and they called the police on me and I got arrested. Um, and so what happened is I sat a night in jail. And it was a very pivotal moment for me because I had a very powerful realization. And I heard this loud voice speak to me because I went inside when I was in jail. I was freaked out. So I just used my skills, went inside of myself. And the voice spoke to me and it said, Caitlin, how long do you plan on keeping yourself in jail? And I went, holy shit, I get it. The physical jail that I was sitting in for the time being was literally mirroring my internal state, my mental prison, because the outer world, mirrors our internal world.
Yep.
Our outer situations mirror our internal state. So I had this huge awakening and I decided that it's time to get to work. I decided, you know what, girlfriend, you got to roll your sleeves up. You got to get to work. You got to start showing up in your life in a new way. And you have to heal these parts of you that don't believe you're worth it. Like I said, that lack confidence, low self-esteem, all of that. Anyway, that voice really kicked me into high gear or led me, to take new action.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, I decided I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to first overcome my challenges, and then I wanted to teach others how to do it so that whatever mental prison was holding them back, AKA keeping them stuck, I wanted to, heal it within myself and then be a guide and lead others into healing it within themselves and help others get unstuck. So that is what set me on this path of coaching.
No, that's an amazing story because, of course, when people always say like, oh, I studied to be a life coach, or I took courses to be a life coach. To me, I hear I'm teaching all of these college students how to run a business, and then for me, I'm like, how are you teaching them how to run a business if you're by practice a teacher? You're teaching them how to teach. You're not teaching them how to, it's kind of like watch what I do, not what I say kind of a thing. And so I think that's really, I'm glad that you looped that in there because otherwise I would have just started diving into more questions and be like, no, what really happened? Because it wasn't a book thing, People don't just wake up and be like, I'm going to be a life coach. Let me study. Maybe some people do because they, they see so many people, the Tony Robbins of the world and all of that stuff. And, obviously they've figured out how to capitalize and great marketing, which is a whole nother conversation. But they see the money behind it, and so they do it for the wrong reasons, not the actual genuine authenticity of wanting to help someone better their lives. And so really, just to really kind of stay on the your history topic, what as the teenager, was this when you were a teenager when this happened?
Oh no.
So this was later on, right? Because you kind of just very lightly mentioned that, like, when you were a teenager, you were attracted to personal development. So what kind of started that initial attraction? Because the majority of teenagers, at least in my world that I run into, they're not exactly trying to better themselves. They're more into doing things that will give them, approval and looking cool in front of their peers. And they're going, just as a teenager, you're going through a lot of changes. Your body's starting to do things that you're just, and then your brain's trying to figure out what's going on. And then I think that's really when you begin the process of figuring yourself out.
Yeah.
And so how did that happen?
I would say being in pain. I was in a lot of internal pain as a teenager. And in order to try to resolve that, I started to go inside. And I think that was just something that I was born with. I was born as a very introspective person.
Mm-hmm.
I was born, I think, with perhaps a natural ability to get in touch with the deepest parts of myself. And so as a teenager, I wasn't cool. I didn't really fit in my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And due to some challenges in my upbringing and my home environment that led me to feel inner pain coupled with not really fitting in school, feeling kind of like a sideliner, like a fringe person who couldn't quite fit into social groups.
Hmm.
It caused me, like I said, to kind of go inside, and that led me on the beginning stages of my growth journey.
Okay. No, that's great, and I'm really glad you touched on it because that's one of the big topics that I always kind of end up bringing up. Whether I mean to or not, it just always comes up. Is I just think it's so important that people they just need to be self aware. You
Yeah.
know, and the way you phrase it is, people are like, oh, she's just one of those spiritual blah 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 people, and because the way you phrase it is, you got in touch with the inner you.
Hmm.
And it's like, sure, that's a descriptive answer, but what she's saying is she figured out how to become very self-aware
True.
on
Yeah.
what's going to trigger her, what's not going to trigger her, what's happening internally versus what's happening externally, because those are two very it can from the outside, it can look like complete chaos, but you can have complete peace on the inside, you
Hmm.
know? And so I think when that doesn't happen, it's because they're not self-aware and they're just so worried about what's happening around them versus looking inward for the next step or the answer. And because a lot of times, when I'm talking to people, it's like, hey, everything that you need to accomplish what you want, you've already got. You just got to figure out where it is and how to use it.
Hmm.
It wouldn't have been a dream that was put into you if it wasn't something that you could do. It's like, oh, if you're the one telling yourself you can't, then you already lost. And you're right, you can't. Because you're the one telling yourself you can't. I'm saying I know you can, but you know, you better than I do. And so, I think that's so just amazing that you were able to figure that out as a young teenager
Well, I
because
had a long way
well
to go.
no but you started the path
True.
because the majority of teenagers, I mean, we're just being honest, right? The
Yeah.
majority of people out there, they're going through the same things, but they're going in the complete opposite direction where they're going externally for all you know the goody good feelings, because they start seeking approval. Why did you buy that car? Oh, because I like the way it makes me feel. What do you mean? Oh yeah, you're like, people are always oh, so it's external, you know but then you're complaining that you're at a job that you hate to be able to afford the things that you bought to impress people that don't even care about you. And so ultimately everything is on you. It's just how deep are you willing to dive into that subject and come to those realizations. And so I think it's just so wonderful when I get to talk to somebody who was able to figure this out at such a young age, because their whole perspective on life, like you can almost see like the ripple effect that started it. It was kind of like, when that situation as a teenager, like you said, like, oh, you still had a long way to go. I was like, yes, that's very true. But that's like looking at the ripple of when a stone was just dropped in the middle of a big lake, right? That first ripple is really small, but then you start getting closer to the shore, that's a pretty big ripple because it's going around the whole circumference of the lake.
Yeah.
And so it's just, but that's just the course of time and energy that you're putting into it, and so that's always amazing to hear. And I guess what from your experience in working with people and things of that sort, if someone is in a situation like you were, as a teenager where they're the outcast, because, that's hard enough to deal with as a teenager, especially for somebody who hasn't figured out to kind of start looking in and working on themselves versus trying to change the external situation. So, what would you say to a parent or even a friend, because I'm sure a parent can talk to their teenager or something. Somebody knows somebody that's in this situation. It's kind of that phrase of you can network the world with six people. And so somebody knows somebody that can use this advice. What would you say to the parent or the friend of somebody that was in your situation, but they haven't figured that out, that self-awareness out?
I think what we're talking about here is a perspective shift. I didn't know that not fitting in was a good thing because I am a leader and I have had leadership qualities my whole life. But I thought, I didn't fit in and I thought I was weird. I thought there was something wrong with me
Mm-hmm.
innately. But the truth is, I just have a different way of viewing the world. I have a different form of expressing myself. I have different insights. I have different points of views, even at a young age, that then was culturally normal, we'll say. So I've always been kind of a march to the beat of my own drum type of a woman. So the advice I would give as a parent or as a child in that position would be a perspective shift, would be to be open to a perspective shift. And what that would look like is a reframe. The reframe could be perhaps the person has leadership qualities, or maybe it's not leadership qualities, but maybe it's something else. Maybe there's a creative element there. Maybe there's something artistic. I guarantee that they have something to offer that perhaps isn't fit in the cultural box. So I would suggest digging for that. I would highlight what makes them different. And I would really focus on capitalizing on that versus making it a deficiency. I would draw out how is that actually an asset and how is that going to really help the person, in the future
Mm-hmm.
down the line, like as a career, but just even personally. So if, I was younger and if I was offered that perspective shift, I think that would have helped me greatly, but I didn't know it at the time.
No, that's so true. And it's almost, because of society and the way, things are in the macro. People are so quick to just send people to, you know, air quotes here, therapist. And oh, something's wrong with you, go see the psychiatrist, and things of that sort. And I almost feel it might be, to reiterate what you said, it's like, yeah, sure, maybe there's some things that they need to work out inside, but I think it's, when you're seeing the therapist and the if something traumatic happens, then yes, get the help that you need. I'm not saying don't do that, but for just somebody trying to figure themselves out, or they're the outcast and they just really don't have the direction, almost like they don't need the, the negative help. They need the positive help. Like maybe get them in front of a life coach, get them in front of, somebody in your field that can help unlock those things, and really somebody that's been in the situation so they can relate. And I think that'll just change the trajectory of so many lives versus kind of trying to put everybody in a box. It's like trying to put a mouse and a monkey next to each other and then have them race a fish on their ability on climbing a tree. It's like, well, the fish was doomed at the beginning. The mouse will take a little longer and the monkey's going to be up there, in two skips. And so I think a lot of people I think they need to be open to a lot more than what society is telling them is available. And I think there is a big shift, because there's a big spiritual shift just, happening right now, because, and it's almost like it's trying to keep up with the technology, boom. So I think just, is that, well, I guess, what are your perspectives on that? Like, is that really kind of thing? Because there's a lot of spiritual teachers and spiritual coaches, life coaches. It's becoming a bigger field, and it's starting to get a lot of market penetration and saturating, into the saturation into the economy. Do you think that's anywhere linked with the big technology boom that we're having?
Do I'm sorry. Could you explain your question in a different way? Do I think what's
No,
linked
you
to?
know what I mean? Because usually, how it's kind of the concept of like the yin and yang, right? Like if something big is going on one thing, then like nature will find a way to balance it out, kind of a thing. And so with technology and everything just becoming such a big presence, do you think like the life coaching and things of that sort, because it's information overload, so maybe people are finding out that like, hey, this is something that I would really like to dive into,
So do I
to
think
kind
that
of, because it's to kind of counteract to just with the overload of technology. Like they may be related, they may not be related. It was just a question that popped into my head, so I was like, hey, I wonder if they're related. And that's kind of what the podcast is like. Hey, let's chat and see what different perspectives are. Like,
okay.
do you think kind of like the life coaching boom and the spiritual coaching boom has anything related to, is any relation to the technology boom at all?
Well, I think technology makes information easier to access.
For sure.
So I think, like any profession, I think just anything related to online business, technology certainly, of course, helps it because, well, we're able to have online business now. So life coaching is much easier to access because you can just search online, unlike the pioneers back in the day had to travel with books in their trunk trying to sell them, or
Yeah.
do ads in the paper to get people to go to their conferences and whatnot.
No,
So
that makes perfect sense. So it's more like technology is just helping people realize that there's so much more out there.
I think so, and I just think access.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, sorry, my brain just kind of went down a rabbit hole there, and I was like, I wonder if they're related. I was like, yeah, let's talk about it. And so, kind of back on topic of what you do. So, really helping driven women get unstuck, and what are the common denominator? I guess everybody has their own, top factors as to why they're stuck individually, because you're really on a one-on-one basis, but so that's really micro. But in a macro scale in your field, what are you seeing as some of the common things that are keeping women stuck?
Um, I think self-worth, self-esteem, confidence, freedom to be themselves. A lot of women that I work with are already doing pretty good in life, but they want to reach that next level. And it might be around showing up differently. So stepping outside of the perception that they're known as by others. Fear of feeling afraid to be seen outside of how they've been previously perceived. So whatever that next level might look like, it's going to involve them showing up differently, which will cause other people to say, "Whoa, so and so is different,"
Mm-hmm.
and that can often feel scary. Um, increased visibility can feel scary for people. Increased visibility in the sense of when you start to show up differently, I think you can get noticed more just by people in general
Yep.
because you're doing things different. I think those are a lot of common themes. And I think it's common just with everyone, woman or not. I just think being a human that like we all experience this on some level or another.
Yeah. And so if someone is not working with, a life coach one on one and somebody that's able to like really help them dive into, you know, the source of that fear or the source of, what happened, 10, 15, 20 years ago that's really almost put an invisible cap on how they view their self-worth or self-esteem or anything like that. What can people kind of start doing to help break these cycles?
So how can people start to examine their patterns and
Yeah,
move
just
around
kind
them?
of in a general sense without, because there's no way you're going to be really able to like help give very specific answers. So just in a general sense, like what are some general practices some people can start maybe doing, or tips on how to maybe bring awareness to it because they might not even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, so you have to look at where these patterns got originally set up, and it's always in childhood. Our childhood creates a template for our adulthood. So, whatever pattern is going on in your life, what you need to do is you need to trace the origin of when that originally got set up. And within that origin, there's going to be so much information to unpack. And then what you have to do is then you have to set up a new pattern, a new, more helpful one. So, another way to describe this is looking at your current story, which is probably outdated and old if you have patterns that are unhelpful in your life. And then what you would do is go on and rewrite your story, write a new one. What's my ideal version that I want to be showing up in the world from? So script that out, and then you would look at the discrepancies between the two. And the discrepancies, like I said, relate to your childhood. That's where all of these patterns, limiting beliefs got set up. So you would need to trace the origin and then offer yourself a new story. Write out, this is who I want to be. And then, like I said, you would start to bridge the gap between the two.
No, that's so true. I was on another call with Julian Doan. He's a transformation coach, and he said the same exact thing. I'm almost tempted to be like, hey, you guys, like you guys got to figure out how to work together because both of you guys are speaking the same language.
Mm. Yeah.
And because everything really, he said, like within your first, few years, he said almost before you're a teenager, you've already been conditioned on how the rest of your life will turn out.
Hmm.
And it's social conditioning from there. And because it's a cycle where you just, redoing the same experience, you're experiencing the same things just with different, in different shapes. And so you got to break that, like you got to really dive back deep into what happened years and years and years ago, and then you're going to be going through an emotional roller coaster. There's going to be crying, laughing, love, hate, anger, like you're going to be going through everything. But it's going to be a breakthrough. And so I think that's something that a lot of people need to partake of. Are there different levels of, I guess, like hot sauce? Are there different levels of intensity on the type of coaching or one-on-one sessions or breakthroughs that people can have? Obviously, it's going to be dependent on how much they want to get out of it. But are there kind of like, hey, if someone's on a budget, what can they do? Because I don't think they're going to be able to hire you to work one-on-one with them for, the next 6 months or whatever it is. I don't know how the rates work. But what can somebody do? What are some options for somebody on a budget?
Well, you can go to your local library and read any book you want for free. So I would start there. Or you could go, on Google, and there's so much information available to us for free now. It's mind blowing. So I would just start to Google whatever it is that you're feeling like you want support around, and take advantage of everything that we have for free. There's so much on social media in terms of free resources too. So many inspirational leaders are putting out free content daily. There's podcasts, of course, for free. So I would just, plug into the topic that you want to learn more about and utilize your free resources around you.
Yeah. And so speaking about social media, I'm a big believer that consumption is really a big influence on, a person's reality. And so how important, what is your perspective on that for like the quality of their consumption? Because everybody has their friends and family, but what's all the other stuff that's going into you? In social media, everybody's on Instagram, everybody's on Facebook, or whatever social platform that they're using. What are they listening to? What are they watching on, on TV? Who are their association? Like, who are the people that are around you, and what are they telling you about you? What limits are they putting on you, or are they lifting you up? What are your perspectives on the ability for somebody to reach that breakthrough? And then how is that linked to their consumption of content?
Well, I think our environment is really important to us. And I'm not just talking physical environment, meaning, our homes and where we live, the environment in terms of, like you're saying, our social media environment, who we're engaging with on a daily basis. So I think when you identify a goal or an objective, you want to also be strategic. Is this environment helpful towards me cultivating the skill that I want to cultivate, or developing this mindset that I want to develop? So taking a hard look at your environment, and is it congruent towards what you say you want? So the first step would be identify what you want. And then step 2, is your environment conducive to what you say you want? That's the approach that I would take.
Perfect. And so first step is always identify the goal. So it's like getting on a plane. You always figure out what the destination is, and then you figure out, how you're going to get there. And so really, with environment and with association and making sure, the people that are around you are helping align you to your goal. So for somebody, say, you specifically help, women get unstuck. So what can they ask of their spouse, or if the spouse is listening, what can be the best steps of a spouse do? What are some of those steps for them to be able to be a better support for someone that is admittedly stuck, and then also for someone who they feel is stuck but doesn't quite realize it? What are some of the steps for the association of that person?
Well, I think it always honestly has to come from ourselves. I don't think anybody, of course, can do it for us. And I think having a supportive partner in general is important. So chances are when you're going to choose your spouse, ideally, you want to have your values in alignment. You want to have your worldview, your perspective, your spiritual views in alignment, all of that. So, I mean, that would obviously be ideal. So chances are you would get yourself set up like that with a partner who, like I said, has those shared values. And I think being supportive um, in terms of working towards couple goals, independent goals, is always a good thing. But beyond that, I really feel that any kind of change has to come from inside of the individual. That if you're waiting to say, I'm waiting for my husband to support me in this, sure, being supportive is good, but I think a better approach would be to do it regardless of what is going on around you at all, because it has to come from a decision inside of you. And I think that could often be an excuse that holds people back. Well, I don't have a supportive husband, or my husband is, he doesn't agree with this goal I have, or I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, it always has to come down to you making a personal decision to want to change your life regardless of who's around you. And I did say, yes, environment is important, but at the same time, it really boils down to you at the end of the day to make that choice.
Yeah, you almost have to, you need, well, not almost, you have to become the CEO of your life. Everything, good and or bad, falls on you. Whether it's directly related or indirectly related, but like, oh, this person did this to me. Well, it's still your fault. You're the one that allowed that person to be in your life. So it's not like, sure, there are some things that are completely out of your control, but if you just kind of like have that approach to it where everything is on me, for me anyway, it's such a freedom, because now it unlocks me having to place blame or deal with anybody else, as being the cause of my situation, because now it's all on me. So if it's all on me, it's up to me on making the change when I want, how drastic I want, how soon I want it to be, how big of a change I want my life to make. And I think it's such a big freedom because it just unlocks you. Like it unlocks like those invisible chains that we think people have on us. And that really kind of, it can affect your energy if you allow other people to really have that type of control over you. And could you kind of dive into that for people? Like, what is energy?
What is energy?
Because people have energy, right? There's an energy within them. Like, don't be an energy waster. Don't, what are you putting your energy into? And so if somebody's talking about, like, if you as a life coach are talking about someone's energy, what is their energy? For people that have, like, they've just heard the term, but they don't really understand it.
I think energy is potential.
Okay.
And it's how you want to utilize, or, some people don't utilize that potential. So every moment is an opportunity. What are we going to do with it? And we get to decide, am I going to utilize this moment in its fullest potential, or am I not? So I think every moment is presented with a new opportunity, and I think energy just boils down to potential that you get to make the decision in terms of how it gets used.
That's such an on-point answer. I've never asked that question before. I've never even thought to ask the question, but that was such a great answer. It's really it's almost like the fuel for your life.
Hmm.
And, and like you said, every situation is going to bring, you know, it can add more energy into your life. It can take away energy out of your life. It's really up to you, but it all comes down to perspective. And but part of that is how you mentioned, like, you can't really have excuses, because and everything needs to come from within. And I think a lot of people make excuses without realizing they're making excuses. And
Yeah.
what do you think the main reason is behind someone who's just constantly making excuses outside of the obvious, where they just haven't, come face to face with the situation and they don't want to take ownership of it? What are some of the, I guess, the more in-depth
Yeah. All
answers
right.
to that?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is I'm not that kind of woman. And what I mean by that is like, oh, I'm not that kind of woman who's in shape. I'm not that kind of woman who eats well. I'm not that kind of woman who can make a 6 or 7 figure income. I'm not that kind of woman who can have a rich, engaged community of friends and peers around me, or whatever, fill in the blank. So they have an idea of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the excuse is this thing, this goal over here, that doesn't fit into this idea I have of who I already am. So the excuse would be they don't see themselves outside of their current view. So that higher level thing is unattainable. Well, it's available to Joanna or whoever over here because
Mm-hmm.
they're that kind of a woman. But me, nah, that's not available to me. I honestly think it kind of just boils down to simply that.
So do you think it's more, is it them just really kind of embracing being, air quote, the victim, and they're almost just wanting to self-sabotage themselves by
I don't
telling
think
telling
they
themselves that they're.
believe. I don't think they believe they can have it at the end for whatever reason. Fill in the blank. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, chances are it's because they have a view of themselves and what they think that other thing they think they want. It doesn't fit into their self view. So it seems impossible. Like they just don't believe they can have X, Y, and Z.
And this would be directly correlated to that transformation that needs to happen, where what happened, way back when in your childhood, because now they've been conditioned not to believe it.
Yeah, so your template gets set up when you're a kid. And unless you examine it, it will continue to run the show for your entire life. Now, if you examine it, now you have a chance to rearrange things, rearrange your belief system, decide to show up differently, make new choices. But that doesn't happen unless you examine your template.
So good. I hope everybody listening's taking notes, even though I know you're driving or walking your dog or something.
Whip out your iPhone and put it in your notes,
Right,
right?
yeah, it's kind of one of those. I was on a call. I'm like, man, like this is gold. Like how, like people. I guess it's a good thing it's a podcast, right? They can just pause it or save it, or
Yeah.
or something like that, because like there's so much some stuff. I know my brain kind of just went off on a few, side roads there. With, hey, what about, you know technology and
I'm on your
spirituality?
journey,
Are
brother. I'm with
Yeah, it's like, are they, are they related? And I was like, I don't even know where that question came from, but it popped in my head,
you.
so it
Sure.
came out of my mouth. And I was
Yeah.
like, I might as well. I'm talking to a spiritual coach. Who better to ask? I'm not gonna know the answer. That's not my world.
Yeah. I got you, man.
For sure. And so for anybody that's, obviously there's online sources and things of that sort. For anybody that's, I guess, stuck at their job, or they want to make the change and they kind of have a passion, I'm like, they really want to help people kind of the way that you do, where it's like, hey, I really want to be able to dive in one-on-one with somebody. What are some of the courses or the classes? Obviously there's information online, but I think it's still important to get the proper training by
Hmm.
somebody who's, in the field practicing. So what are some of the steps for somebody that wants to begin the process of pursuing becoming, a performance coach and a peak coach and life coach and things of that sort?
Yeah. So I actually offer life coach training myself. It's a 6 month program. And the first 2 months, you receive one-on-one life coaching with me because in order to be a life coach yourself, it's really important to continue to work on your own stuff and just clear out any limiting beliefs that may be blocking you from fully stepping into your greatest capacity to be a life coach. Then phase 2 is you learn how to actually life coach others. I teach you how to conduct sessions, how to spot other people's limiting beliefs and patterns, and how to guide people from reaching their goals. And then the third part is I offer business coaching. So I teach you how to start and grow a coaching business, how to get clients, sales, set up your coaching business, all of that jazz. And then you get a certificate of completion and a badge for your website. So people can go through me to get that training if they want. But if that doesn't sound appealing, then there is so many options online. Mm-hmm. I'm sure if you just did like a quick Google search of like how to become a life coach, I can't even imagine how much stuff would pop up today.
So yeah, because of that, how would somebody be able to filter through? Because, you don't want to run into the person that's, it's just like entrepreneurs, right? Now anybody and everybody on Instagram is an entrepreneur because they, got a sticker made. So they're an entrepreneur. And so how do they weed out, somebody who's a legitimate life coach? Are there certain things that they should be on the lookout for, certain credentials on seeing if somebody's, somebody that's legit versus somebody who's just saying that they are?
I personally always take a practical and a spiritual approach. So spiritually speaking, I would trust your intuition, trust what you feel, trust the vibes you are getting, tune into your body. And practically, I would ask very pointed, clarifying questions. What's important to you? Everybody has a different metric of importance when wanting to engage in a training of some sort. So what values are you looking for? Like, what are you hoping to actually get out of the training? And then craft questions based on what you're hoping to get out of to see if what they offer matches that.
Perfect. So anybody listening that wants to get into life coaching, just call Caitlin.
Yeah, or you could do that.
Yeah. Well, really quick, because your life coaching is, so this one-on-one stuff, can it be done, through the web, or is it more of like an in-person thing? I've always understood it like to get the most out of it, you want to be in the moment with them physically, because that's, you get all of the emotions. So can this coaching be taken online, or is this more of a, an in-person one-on-one interaction?
I don't do any in person. I am 100% online. I work with people all over the world. I do in-person workshops, and I've led retreats, and I do speaking. But in terms of my coaching, it's all either the phone, FaceTime, or Skype.
Wow, absolutely. 100% ease of access and no friction at all. So she's taken a page out of Jeff Bezos's book, because he is all about eliminating friction for the consumer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, think about it, right? Like Amazon, like why does everybody shop on Amazon? Well, because I just have to hit one button and it's done. I don't even have to get out of bed, and I can have groceries delivered to my door.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, he understands, how to people and their habits and things of that sort. So that's great. No friction. Everybody can just jump online and find you. Where can people find you?
My website, CaitlinWinkley.com, and any social media channel. If you just type in Caitlin Winkley, you'll be able to find me and hop on my journey.
Perfect. So Caitlin Winkley, that's CAITLIN, and then Winkley, WINKLEY. Social media, you have her website. And then just real quick, one last question that just popped into my head.
Sure.
Welcome to the life of talking to me. Stuff just happened. Can you kind of just lightly touch on the patterns or the pitfalls of patterns?
Okay. What do you mean?
Because I think a lot of people don't realize that they get into patterns, and that can be very detrimental to them, because.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anytime we engage in a pattern, our ability to choose goes out the window. So a pattern is something automatic. When something is automatic, we have no choice. It is knee jerk. It is cause and effect. This happens, and I react this way. All right. So when we break a pattern, we automatically open ourselves up to choice. And when we open ourselves up to choice, that is how we create the life that we want to be living, because we get to say, this is a response that I am choosing to engage in. This is a way that I am choosing to show up. This is a thought that I am choosing to believe in. So all of a sudden, we move again from lack of choice, knee jerk, we plateau, we stay the same because everything is on autopilot. So we don't move anywhere differently. The needle doesn't move. And when we start to break a pattern, we introduce the concept of choice. I get to choose how I want to respond to this situation, which is going to dictate the outcome. And a series of outcomes come together to create the totality of my life. So, boom, you just created your life.
And that is how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. I was like, if this was live, I'd be like on the side being like, drop the mic. Drop the mic. Drop the mic. Because that cannot end any better. Thank you, Caitlin, for joining us on the call. Everybody, you know where to find her, Caitlin Winkley, on social media. You have her website. Get some one-on-one coaching and break those patterns. And here's where we drop the mic. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Jen.
We will be in touch, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys. Thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Blast Talks. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you tell your friends too, because we got a lot more coming for you, and I know you're going to love it.